Hello again, this is Mike with Toy Train Tips and Tricks, and we're working on the new layout again in this episode. And last time we talked about wiring up the track. This time we are wiring up turnouts, and that is going to give us the opportunity to review common bus wiring, talk about accessory bus wiring, and show not only how to wire up these particular turnouts, but also have some tips for wiring accessories to separate transformer power as well. So let's get started. Okay, so regarding O27 tubular turnouts, I use K-Line, Lionel, and Marx turnouts in different parts of my railroad. I have found that there is no one perfect turnout for O27 tubular track. Each of the brands that I use, Lionel, K-Line, and Marx, has its own strengths and weaknesses. And so I use the different turnouts in different scenarios, different situations. So in this part of the layout, I am using K-Line O42 diameter curve with O27 profile track. Now these wiring tips will also apply to K-Line's O27 turnouts. They also apply to the later style of K-Line turnouts that have the LEDs instead of this large switch machine and light bulbs on top. Keep in mind that Lionel also produced O42 turnouts. I find these K-Lines are a little easier to find than the Lionel versions in the O42 anyway. In O27, Lionel turnouts are far easier to find, but these are becoming more difficult to find because, after all, none of these have been made in 25 plus years, but they still can be found on online auction sites, at train shows, etc. So that's what I'm using for this particular part of the layout. You will notice that some of these 5 connectors are already wired up, and just to review from the last video, this post with the black wire, this goes to my common bus, you could say ground wire, but it's technically common, but it's a bus wire. My common bus wire is an 8-gauge bare copper wire that I've run around the underside perimeter of my layout table. So any common connection, whether it's for the switch motor, whether it's for the outside rail, whether it's to the common side of the transformer, whether it's to another accessory, all of them, all I have to do is find the shortest distance to that common bus wire, which in this case, it's under the layout right about here. And so a very short wire, and that saves a lot on time and a whole lot in wiring, and so it's cheaper and faster. This other wire that is already hooked up, this is actually hooked up to track power. This is actually supplying the track power from the transformer through this post to the center rails of the turnout. And this is one of those unique features of these K-Line turnouts that I like, for especially for this portion of the layout. So the remaining 3 terminals are power to the turnout motor, and then the 2 commons for switching the switch motor in either direction, either for the turnout or for straight. If I only have 1 or 2 turnouts and no other accessories in an area, I can simply run that power straight back to my accessory transformer or the accessory side of a transformer that I'm using. For right now, I'm using just the accessory side of the CW80 transformer that is also supplying track power. As the layout grows, I will switch that to a dedicated transformer just for running turnouts and accessories. So this will provide constant power for the switch turnouts. And in fact, I will be able to throw the turnout whether there is power to the track at all. But when I have a large number of turnouts and accessories in one small area of the layout, rather than running each of those accessory power wires back to the transformer, I will use a similar technique to what I used with the common bus. In this situation, I will use an accessory bus. I will run 1 wire to my accessory transformer to a bus strip. So this, right now, it's terminal strips. I will screw in this connector, which will make it a bus. It'll connect electrically everything on this one side together. And then each of the terminals here will go to a turnout or other accessory that is using that common voltage off of the accessory transformer. And then all I have to do is use one terminal to go to that accessory transformer to supply the power for all of those. Later on, as the layout grows and I ditch the CW80 and have a designated accessory transformer, all I have to do is switch that one terminal to that transformer instead of the CW80, and everything is switched over without having to rewire every single terminal. So I'm going to mount this underneath the layout, and all of my power for my turnouts is going to come here instead of running all of them back to the transformer. Since I've already used black as my wire for common and the large red wire for my track power, in order to avoid confusion underneath the layout, I am going to be using yellow as my wire for this accessory hot. So now I need to drill a hole through my table right here for my accessory power, attach my yellow wire to the bus terminal, and then run one wire from the bus terminal back to the transformer, and I will have constant voltage power for this turnout. These K-line turnouts can be run off of track power, but they work much better off of constant accessory power. The same is true of Lionels, that they work better with constant power, although they are factory set to run off of track power. I have a video on how to convert these to constant accessory power, and you can find that in the comments section of the video. You can find a link to that video, or towards the end of this video, a card will pop up right here with a link to how to wire Lionel turnouts for accessory power. The remaining two terminals hook up to our switch controller, and they will activate the switch motor to turn either straight or curved. Similarly, the Lionel turnouts, this would be the ground post, and then these two posts control the switch motor turning for either the straight or curved direction. Lionel and K-line switch controllers are very similar. The K-lines versus the Lionel switch controllers of the MPC and modern era. However, they are not interchangeable. They are wired differently internally, and so one will not really work with the other. Some Lionels do have lenses here that simulate lights. The K-lines do actually have light bulbs. The other difference is how they are mounted. You see the Lionels have these tabs here on the end, whereas the K-lines have this very deep screw hole, which is honestly quite difficult to deal with. And the other clue is the K-lines say K-line right there on them. In the case of the Lionel switch controller, with our 3-stranded wires, one of the outside wires, and it depends on which direction you're looking at it, but one of the outside wires goes to the common post. And that sometimes is denoted with a special connector. I've added this one. And then the other two are for the directional switch. On the K-line switch controller, the center wire of the strand is intended to go to common, and the other two to control the switch motors. So if you are wiring this up just for track power, your wires will actually cross over each other as the center wire goes to common and the other two go across. However, since we are wiring these up with common bus wiring and hot accessory, this center wire of the controller is going to connect to my common bus wire under the layout, and then these two will connect to the switch terminals. However, the distance between the turnout and my common bus for my switch terminals is longer than the 3 feet or so of wire that they have supplied. So I am going to extend my wires. I'm going to, for the common that'll be a short wire anyway. That will work just fine. The other two, I will extend using this doorbell wire. Now you'll notice it's a smaller gauge than what I use for the track, but that's okay because the voltage is only carried through this for a very short time as the switch is thrown. Now traditionally, the two directions of the turnout are green for straight, red for turn. Rather than getting red and green wire, which it can get, but in this case, I'm going to use the red for the red and the white for straight, and that is the system I'm going to use for this. So in the case of these K-line turnouts, the post closest to the common is to control the curved, and the post closest, the next one is for straight. So red and green, or in this case of my wiring, red and white. Meanwhile, back at the transformer, here on my accessory hot side, this is 18 volt constant power. My common ground side, the ground has already been hooked up with the transformer, but again, I'm going to run this to my common bus wire, which again is right about here underneath the layout. And here the yellow wire is attached to the accessory hot, and this yellow is going to designate for me 18 volts constant power. So anything hooked up with yellow on the layout is going to be getting 18 volts continuous power. This goes underneath the layout to another bus that the turnouts are attached to, and any accessories that use full power will also tie into that bus. As for my K-line switch controller, the screws on this are very small and it requires very long. A number 4, probably 1.5 inches, not a very common wood screw. So I have actually attached this with some hook and loop tape, aka Velcro. This is just a temporary setup for now. This portion of the layout, remember, one of my goals is to get the trains running quickly. So this portion of the layout right now, I have turnouts that go to nowhere on the track plan. So actually, I only need to wire up 3 turnouts for now. And then later on, as I attach the others and continue the track around the rest of the layout, I will be putting in a more complicated control panel here for these turnouts. But for right now, this is it. So my 3 wires coming out of the switch controller, the middle wire goes to my common bus. Again, it's right about here underneath the layout. The other 2 wires go to corresponding terminal blocks for the red side / green side. In this case, I was close enough. My terminal block is right underneath the middle of the layout. In this case, the wire was actually long enough to reach the 2 terminal blocks, which are then tied into the red and white wires that go to the turnout. And so as I throw the switch, not only do my lights change, but the turnout throws as well. And as you can see, even when there is no power going to the center rail, no power going to the track, with this wiring, the Nonderail feature still works. And so now I have the wiring for this turnout. I simply repeat it for the other turnouts, and of course mark it down in my notebook as I go so that I know which turnout is where on the wiring diagram. And so that's it for K-line turnouts. Lionels are a little simpler if we're using the standard factory version, because again, we just have the ground. We have the 2 for throwing. We don't have the constant power. But again, these can be modified for constant power, which I think helps them operate better. And as promised, here is the link to that video showing how to modify Lionel turnouts in that manner. So I hope you found this video useful and entertaining as well. And if so, please click that like button, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, even leave a comment if you liked it, or if you found something that I should be doing differently, that you might have an easier solution for some things. And so until next time, keep those trains running, and we'll catch you on Toy Train Tips and Tricks.